Chapter 1. Nightmares of Aang. Krayphiss. Pre-tribe era. Years after Alya's eye, a spirit eye that watches the forest, was created to protect the forest, the first Night Council was established. It was not called that, but it was that. They were the first set of people to go out and see beyond the group what was out of sight. They started to hunt Trinuu, bull-like animals. The most successful in this group were two men named Klar and Krayphiss. Klar and Krayphiss were inseparable as they had good hunting chemistry. They started to take longer journeys, which had its rewards and bring back more food, but worried the people back in the village as they would be gone for months. At this time Krayphiss would hear Klar talk about a lady in the woods, which at first scared Krayphiss. Eventually Klar tells Kray he met her and that she's beauty. Kray says to Klar to be careful that she's not a god trying to trick and eat him. The second time Klar tells Kray about her. He says that he's in love. This is when Kray assumed everything is just in his mind and ignored him the rest of the time he talked about her. When they made it back to camp, Kray would talk to his wife about how he thinks the trees drove Klar mad. Akina is his wife. She was a good friend of Klar as well. Akina tells Klar to look out for his friend. Krayphill's son Drisk looked up to his father and would be extremely excited when he come back from hunting trips. Drisk would tell all the other kids about his dad and how he could rip a tree out with his bare hands. Drisk started to get sad because he missed his dad because he went on longer trips. The other kids would try to cheer him up with no success. After Kray talked to Akina about Klar, she told him to talk to his son. After having a talk, Kray offered to take Drisk on his next trip, which excited Drisk. Aka was skeptical but eventually allowed it, feeling that Kray would protect him. On the next trip the men all went into what would be called Sky Fields. Drisk was excited but stayed by his father the entire time. All stayed amongst the rocks for days looking at the Trinuu. They were shocked at how many were grouped there. Klar for the first time was not with them. Kray and the men ditched him as he said he wanted to talk to the lady of the forest again. At this time Kray got the others to believe Klar was talking Jin nonsense. In the rocky mountain terrain near Sky Fields, as the men would sneak along tracing the Trinuu, Drisk would notice a man-like shadow figure in the distance following them. Drisk would tell his father about it. Kray told Drisk that it's probably Klar catching up with them and not to worry. At night while they sleep, Drisk woke up hearing the sound of his name and went looking for who called it. By morning all panic as they couldn't find him. They ventured further into the terrain to find Drisk standing talking to a man. But they were far enough away not to make out who it is. The men told Kray they found Drisk. Drisk was pointing to the men before Kray was in sight of Drisk. The men yelled out to Drisk and Klar. When Krayphiss came into sight, the man grew taller. And his arm became abnormally large and his chest opened up to like a doorway. And he snatched Drisk inside him. After he did this, Drisk disappeared and the man did seconds later as a smoky shadow. Krayphiss screamed Drisk's name and ran towards him. The men did as well. They all couldn't make out what had happened. They went searching for days, going mad about what had happened. They finally returned to camp to collect. Ekhna was scared and Krayphiss promised he would come back with their son if it kills him. On the second trip Krayphiss and the rest fell out with Klar and his nonsense about the lady of the forest. This saddened Klar and he was also afraid for Drisk. Klar said he would see what he could do to help. If she could help. On this next trip Krayphiss and the men went with their hunting tools looking for Drisk. They were now further into the mountains than ever before and closer to volcanoes. They came across the Shadow Man and called out to him. The Shadow Man began to approach them. As he got closer it began to set into the men that the man was taller than he looked. When they gazed upon him they finally saw that he was not a man. This was a horned grayest black creature with man arms. The creature spoke and told them its name. I am Ornak, my pleasure to din with you, friend. The men told him to give Drisk back. Ornak replied, this can be done but will not. The men attacked him. Ornak extended out his razor-sharp ridged bat wings that trailed thick dark black smoke. Only when they weren't moving but disappeared when they did. The wings knocked the men down. Upon seeing this Krayphiss learned that the creature didn't actually have legs. Just the same shadow smoke as his wings, and he moved about the rocks as a snake. Ornok with his red swanny eyes looked at Krayphiss and instantly knew him. "You are the boy's father, aren't you?" Ornok slithers towards Krayphiss and Kray stands in fear of what he sees, unable to move. Ornok looks upon and tells him, "I cannot make my mind up. Should you join the boy or should you join the dead?" As the creature began to circle Krayphiss, the men gets back up to attack him. One of the men has a sonara on his head. Krayphiss sees Ornok react scared and steps back. Ornok flaps his wings again and the razor-sharp ridges cuts all the men into dismembered pieces except for the one with the sonara on. The magic of the beast has no effect on him. Krayphiss chooses to act and grabs his bone sword to strike Ornok, stabbing it. The other man rushes Ornok, but his sonara falls off in the process. Ornok pushes Kray back and dismembers the man. Kray notices the difference and grabs the sonara. He puts it on before Ornok attacks him. Ornok stops and looks at Krayphiss again. "If you plan to see the child again, you would accept your future. Remove what you now gesture with." Krayphiss tells him that they are now on even playing fields. Ornok squints and says, "As you hope to. You will fail to see this error in thinking." Klar jumps up out of the rocks to strike Ornok and is pushed away. This jump attack also pushing Kray back. Ornok slithers to Klar injured on the ground. Klar comes back into slowly as Ornok comes toward him. Ornok looks back at Kray to notice his reaction. Ornok grabs Klar by the throat and picks him up and then looks at Kray. "Remove the material from your head and I'll let him live long enough to see you die," says Ornok. Kray spits out blood but doesn't speak. "Your silence is your decision." Ornok reaches back his hand and it turns into a black long sword like finger claws as he begins to stab Klar with it. A purple cloud of night magic surrounds him at his feet. This distracts him and makes him drop Klar. Jada walks up from the far. "You are not permitted here on this planet," she says. "I do as I please," says Ornok. "Your ways and her spirit will not keep you from me for long," he says before fleeing. Krayphiss tries to run after him but his leg is badly injured. Jada comes to Klar and heals him, allowing him to walk. He sees her face and says, "Somehow I knew I would see myself smiling at you again." Jada smiles for a second before helping him up. Jada lets them know that Drisk is safe but that Ornok plans to never release the boy. She also lets Klar know not to question her emotions again. Kray finally recognizes that Klar was correct. Krayphiss asks why Jada didn't kill Ornok for them. She lets them know she cannot kill him but he cannot kill her. She tells them that she is protected by the Creator and that Ornok is not a demon but a spirit to balance the Creator's presence in the universe. Krayphiss tells both of them he will not return without his son. Jada sends Krayphiss love for his son. "My love for my Creator is the love you have for your son. You would die many times in failure before living with giving up for your son. For this I grant to you the time you need." She places her hand on Krayphiss' head and heals him. Krayphiss stands up completely healed. She tells him the item on his head protects him from Ornok's magic, as it is a symbol of their Creator. But it will not kill Ornok and that he would have to figure that out for himself. She also tells Krayphiss that if we're to sway from finding his son and breaking his promise to Drisk's mother by stepping into Ang Forest without Drisk, that the immortality will be lost. Krayphiss talks to Klar and tells him that he will not stop until Drisk is safe. Klar asks Krayphiss what of Aka. Kray stops and passes a tear out his eye. "Aka will know what I plan to do as she knows my soul better than I." Klar hugs his friend and tells him to find Drisk before Kray plans to leave. Jada turns the bone sword Kray grabs into a steel larger sword. Krayphiss grabs it, looks back and says, "I used to think gods put us here to toy with. You have cleansed this from me and for that I thank you." Kray leaves. Klar looks back at Jada to say bye but she kisses him before he could speak. She stops and looks at him. "I wanted to know what it felt like, what you speak of to me." Klar kisses her back. Jada stops and looks at him. If I were someone else I would follow you to the ends of times, but I have other matters set for me. I cannot follow you. Clar looks sad but understands. You must leave and get back to your people, she says. As Clar begins to head back, Jada tells Clar thanks. He asks for what and she says, for teaching me to love you, says Jada before walking away and fogging up to disappear. Clar makes it back to the camp with blood on his hand and a dirty face. He tells the camp he is the only one to survive. Aka looks at him and hugs him. She asks if he was with Krayphiss before he died. Clar tells him yes and that he joins Drisk before crying. Aka says you were a good friend to him no matter what others people say. Clar tells everyone that he doesn't know what killed his men, but that it walks in the shadows of the mountain. After this the area is deemed Shadowfoot and everyone out of fear wishes never to go there. Clar also lets people know that the Sonara is that of the gods. And this helps installs the idea of the gods. More as Clar tells them the Sonara protected him from being killed by the shadows. For this the new walk barrier of the camp is built in the shape of a Sonara to protect from threats. Chapter 2. There's only one king on this mountain. 1,000 years later. 900 years after the White Flame story. Krayphiss and Daylight Cave people had near meets and know of each other but never met. He doesn't know anything about powers or caves. Krayphiss carves his face into his cave hideout to let Ornok know where he lives. He wants him to find him. Kray first saw Daylight Cave people when they were building a rock bridge. The 7-foot tower of muscle and skin watched from afar. He noticed they could teleport and thought they were gods. They came across each other a lot because they ate the same food. Deer, bird, and fish. Fish was a delicacy because the rivers were closer to sky fields. Krayphiss had himself but Daylight has Krugs. Deformed dogs and wolves to hunt with. They finally met one day when Kray killed a deer Daylight was following. Krayphiss carries the dead deer under his arm when he sees Daylight in the distance. Kray starts to run. Daylight gives chase and keeps up with Kray as they are skinny and can teleport. Krayphiss is confused as to why gods would chase for deer. One Daylight people teleport in front of him. Krayphiss throws his sword in the ground. Leaps off it and grab it before jumping over a Daylight people. Krayphiss make it to a cave bridge and is cornered by the teleporters. Krayphiss swings at 3 of them and they disappear and reappear kicking him. I always wondered what gods' insides look like. Must be full of deer meat, he says. He cocks back and swing again and they disappear. One reappears on his sword. He called me a god. It says before laughing. It disappears and reappears stabbing Krayphiss in the stomach. When no blood appears the Daylight is confused. Who's the god again, it says. Krayphiss head butts him with his own sword pulling it out. This pushes the guy into a rock knocking him unconscious. The rest White Flame in a rage cause of this. A standoff ensues. If you're not gods then what are you, says Krayphiss. The leaders walks forward and says. I could ask you the same. A pissed off hungry mountain man, he replies. Mountain men are capable of stabs wounds, the leader says. Krayphiss responds with. It's my own testimony why I'm not. Ask, he grips his sword. Very well. I'm not sure, I wouldn't have cared for the answer. Hand over the feast and we leave, says the leader. How about you leave, says Krayphiss. The leader pulls out his bone sword and swings for Kray. Kray swings his sword and breaks the leader's bone sword. Another member reaches for his sword while yelling out. Salt. Kray swings again and the leader teleports away. Throughout all of this Krayphiss notices that the Krugs cannot teleport like the people. Krayphiss swings wild towards the Daylight people and the teleport away which give Kray full access of the Krug. He grabs it by its neck and holds it over the cliff over the bridge. The Daylight people are now all together and not surrounding him. Last chance to leave or whatever you call this, learns how to fly. He says. The leader says. Well, never rest to see to that you won't if you do this. Your words carry no fear with me. Says Kray as he drops the Krug. All the daylight people teleport overboard, throwing each other closer toward the Krug, catching it and teleporting it as they all drop. This makes for a smoother landing towards the bottom and gives Krayphiss a chance to leave with the deer. Krayphiss' cave was in the last set of dry mountains before the volcanoes. He used his sword to carve his face above the doorway to the cave. He wanted everyone to know where he was. His resting quarters lays at the end of a tunnel shaft he made that goes to the bottom of the cave towards a lake underneath the mountain. He carved several paths to make it harder to get to his quarters so he can trap intruders in a maze. 3 days after fighting daylight, Krayphiss is gutting the deer and wrapping meat in leaves as he leaves the leftover meat on cold rocks near the lake for later. In Aang, people marry by wearing identical seashell necklaces to show who they are wed to. As meat cook in the fire, Kray lays his sonara near a necklace of his wife. "Sorry to wake you, best friend," he says. It's been over 1,000 years since he last saw Akha, but he pretends she's still alive to deal with the pain. "Still no sign of Drisk, though. I brought back your favorite. As promised, it's on the fire right now." Quietness in the cave breaks by the sound of fire. Krayphiss looks away. "We're not having this conversation again." He looks back at the necklace. "I told you I'd keep him safe." A tear falls from his eye. "I will keep him safe." He places some meat from the fire next to the necklace. Time passes before he pulls a leaf rock chalk drawing from his cloth. "I drew another picture of Drisk today," he says while lightly smiling. "I'm not an artist like you, but I try," he says, while handing the leaf to the necklace. He breaks from the fantasy of talking to his wife to lift the necklace and put the leaf up under it. He resumes after. "You like it?" he asks of the necklace. "I promise the next for you, best friend," Krayphiss continues. After caressing the necklace, a tremor hits his quarters. A scream that sounds like thick metal rope detaching in the wind comes next. Like a haunted sonar dolphin mating call. He looks up the tunnel to see a wing flash past him in the maze, getting closer, knocking into the wall because the size of it. This would be the second quarters Ornak found of Krayphiss. Kray runs to grab the necklace, sword and meat. As he does that, Ornak make his way to the end of the tunnel to stare Krayphiss in the face. "You keep this game interesting," says Ornak as his eyes light up. Ornak slither towards Krayphiss, knocking down ceiling walls along the way. Kray dives in the under-cave lake before the entire structure collapses, leaving just Ornak. As he swims in the water, cave rock falls near him. He anticipated this. He wanted to be found. He knew Ornak couldn't fit in the cave and would cause a collapse. He wanted to trap him. Krayphiss grabs a hold of one of the rocks, falling to the bottom of the lake floor. The river is deep. In no time, Krayphiss passes out, drowning in the process. As the rock hits the floor, Krayphiss' body floats and gets caught in a current which floats it through a cave tunnel of water. His body shoots out on the other side of the mountain through a cave underneath a waterfall from a small river. After an hour, Krayphiss' body floats to the coast of the river, and he regains consciousness and coughs up water. He first checks for his wife's necklace and then his sword. He reaches for his meat, but it's watered down and falls apart off the leaf. He throws it back in the water, giving up hope of eating that night. Krayphiss walks back towards the entrance of the cave, which is on the other side. He is checking his trap to make sure Ornak is still buried in the rock. Night falls when he makes it back to the front of the cave. His sword holstered and a branch lift of fire, Krayphiss moves rock after rock in the night. His strength doubled since Jada gave him immortality. Krayphiss accidentally throws a rock too far, creating a breeze which blows out the torch. Krayphiss feels displeased and begins to strike the branch against the walls of the cave to get another match going. It wouldn't take at first because of the ashes from the last cherry. Before he could strike again, a voice says, "It's dangerous in the dark." Ornak grabs him by the waist, throwing him out the beginning of the tunnel. Krayphiss turns mid-air and pulls his sword out and stabs it into the next mountain. He instantly turns around, but nothing is there. The sound of the night fills the air as his ears pound and his heart drums away. After catching his breath, he yells for his son, Drisk. Drisk. Can you hear me? Yells Krayphiss. Oh no. I'm sorry to tell you Drisk is not near. Says Ornock in the dark. Reveal where you stand, coward. Says Krayphiss, still holding on to the sword in the wall. Out of the dark. Black dagger-like claws howl towards Krayphiss. He removes his sword and drops down before getting hit. I must have said something you really like. Did I? Says Krayphiss, knowing he got under Ornock's skin. Krayphiss reaches for his head when he remembers the Sonara was still in the cave, probably destroyed now. Krayphiss, still brave, walks towards the dark where he heard the voice coming from. He switches hand with his sword. He silently says, show yourself, you fool. The shape of Ornock's head appears through the shadows as that air dolphin-like sonar scream happens. Then a wing out of the shadow knocks Krayphiss back as he blocks with his blade. Without the Sonara, Ornock can get close to Krayphiss. When Krayphiss has it on, Ornock burns a bit when touching him. Krayphiss falls by a ledge and looks down as rocks bounce of the wall, falling to the bottom. He knows he need to get up soon or gets caught by Ornock. Krayphiss runs towards Ornock with his sword and swings. One of Ornock's wings grows sharp enough on the elbow bend and he uses this as a sword to block Krayphiss. Krayphiss fakes swing in another direction before swinging back and stabs Ornock, who lets out the sonar cry. Ornock flaps his wing S in the air and says till we meet again and flies off, making the sonar cry in the distance. Krayphiss gets up staring at the winged Dark Lord flying away. A week later. Krayphiss sits on a boulder chewing on raw bird. You ever wonder what she was like, best friend, he says. Krayphiss says this while looking at a freshly made Sonara in his hand. With his wife's necklace around his neck he talks to it. He pauses for a moment as if the necklace talked back. Well, how can I like someone I never met, best friend, he says. Before he could take another bite of bird he hears small rocks falling behind him. This is followed up by laughter. Krayphiss turns to see 4 members of Daylight Cave stand above him on a ledge. 3 men and 1 woman. All 4 have spears while the middle one, who's the leader, laughs. He openingly mocks Krayphiss. Laughs. I knew you were odd, but this is surreal. Who are you talking to, he says. Krayphiss jumps off the boulder and grabs his sword, facing the cave people. Kray whispers up under his breath as if the necklace asks him something. They are not friendly, best friend, he says. The leader jumps down in front of Krayphiss as the others followed. Well, we could have been have you not thrown my krug from a bridge. The leader looks up in his mind with a facial expression of debate and conflict with himself before speaking again. Mostly we wouldn't been friendly, but you didn't know that. He says before laughing. That's close enough, says Krayphiss. The leader stops walking and says. I told you we wouldn't rest, remember? After today, indeed you will. Says the leader. Food is food, says Krayphiss, raising his sword. I don't share, says the leader, turning into white flame. Krayphiss looks through his sword with curiosity. If you're not a god, how do you do that, he asks. One of the members in the back says. It's true. He can't flare up. Another member said. Or bleed. The female walks forward next to the leader. I do not understand you, she says. When Krayphiss gets a clear picture of her, his sword drops slightly as he is taken back by her beauty. The leader snaps him out of his trance. Poke him long enough, anything will bleed. Krayphiss raises his sword back to his face and says. No fear, remember, before he smirks. This makes the leader mad and initiate the fight. The leader teleports to Kray, slicing his throat. The gash disappears. And Krayphiss punches him back 6 feet. The other 2 warriors stab their bone spears into his pec. Now that he knows they're not gods, he doesn't run from them. Krayphiss grabs both spears. And pull them out his chest. Krayphiss throws them with the men while they hold on to the spears. They teleport back from being thrown. As the woman runs up to attack, Krayphiss backhands her to the ground. He lifts his foot to stomp her but stops mid-air when her facial beauty distracts him. This gives the 2 guys time to rush him from the side and knock him off his feet. With both men on top of him, they punch him as hard as they can, with his skull bouncing off the rocks as he guards his face against the hits. He stops guarding his face to wrap his arms around both men and bear hug them so hard a shockwave happens. He throws the men off him once they passed out. And as he make it to his feet, the woman throws a spear in his face. He now has half the staff sticking out his face. This blocks his view as she runs up again and back flips, swing her leg to trip him back off his feet. His hand stops his fall as he rests on his knee and pull the spear out. By now the girl ran up his arm to jump kick him, but he grabs her leg before she can. He throws her to the wall mid-height and is stabbed again by 3 spears from the leader. "I'm no longer amused by you," yell the leader. "You will die somehow," he says softly as he leans closer to his face. The spears nailed him to the same wall he slammed the woman to. For a moment it looks like they won. "You done?" asks Krayphiss as the hole in his face disappears. He lifts himself from the wall and walks through the spears stabbed in his chest, until he's removed from them and grabs his sword. The whole time the leader is still face to face with him. But so shocked at Krayphiss' face growing back, he doesn't stop him from picking up his sword off the ground. In desperation, the leader's last move was to snatch the necklace off Krayphiss' neck. Kray panics and reaches out while saying, "Best friend." The leader teleports away and feels confident again, now having the upper hand. So the immortal has a weakness, he says while looking at the necklace. "Harm a hair on her head and I'll kill you," says Krayphiss. The leader looks up and says mockingly, "Your words have no fear with me," and crushes the necklace in his hand while looking at Krayphiss. Krayphiss' eyes gets big as he yells "murderer," and slashes his sword down the middle in the ground, producing a sound wave that knocks the leader and woman down. Unfortunately, the sound wave is so massive it causes an avalanche in the back. The rocks at the top shake as they move loud and the ground trembles. Kray walks up to the remaining pieces of the necklace. He bends over and picks it up with tears in his eyes. The leader wraps around the woman member, who can't help but stare at Kray holding the broken necklace. The rumbling wakes the other 2 men, who looks at the leader when he says he'll have to wait. Both groups of 2 teleport as the first rock falls from the cliffs above. Krayphiss is unmoved by the chaos around him. He just stares at the crushed seashells in his hand. Only 3 remains intact. His finger focuses on their 3 remaining in his palm as he says, "There you are, best friend." He grabs leaves from a nearby tree before it is crumbled by rock and wraps the shells in it before pocketing them in his cloth. He near misses rock after rock, boulder after boulder, with loud thumps and cracks in the air. He takes his sword before it is ran over by the mountain. The tremors start to pick up and balance becomes a struggle. He looks at a plain boulder coming down the hill. Nothing special about it, but his intuition tells him to look longer at it. The air dolphin sonar sound is back. Kray is confused. The sound is coming from the boulder, but he sees nothing. He holds his blade behind his head to prepare for what comes next. Krayphiss sits on a boulder, moving behind him as not to walk, but still keeping his eye on the boulder on the hill. The sonar gets louder as the boulder gets closer. Ornock leaps from behind it. Kray jumps up as Ornock's boulder smashes into his. Krayphiss blocks Ornock's wing and slash mid-air as they cross paths. Each lands on left or right side of the aisle of passage, not to be hit by the avalanche of moving rock in the middle. They trade spots as they jump mid-air to sword and wing swipe at each other. After several passings, Ornock uses his other wing as a swords to pick up moving rock from beneath him to throw at Krayphiss. Blocking Ornock's wing and rocks becomes too much for Kray. He has a rough landing on the left aisle of the avalanche. He has to use his sword to help from chaotically moving down the mountain. This causes Kray to fall behind. Ornock behinds to jump again when he no longer sees Krayphiss. Ornock jumps on a rock in the middle of the avalanche to look back for Kray. After seconds, Krayphiss jumps from the middle of the moving rock in front of Ornock with his blade in a stabbing motion. Ornock wraps himself in his wings as Krayphiss lands on him. The stab has no effect as his wings are hardened. Ornock opens his wings, propelling Kray in a flip in the air. He spins to slice the now unblocked face of Ornock. Ornock lets out another sonar cry as Krayphiss lands on a moving rock in the passage. A dead end appears as Ornock disappears under the rock. A boulder 4 times the size of Ornock sits at the end of the passage. As Kray gets closer to it, he swipes at rocks bouncing back off it. Krayphiss looks to the side for a ledge to jump off to before hitting the dead end. Before he could do anything, Ornock's hand reaches from up under the moving rock to grab his leg. Before he could cut the hand, he smacks into the boulder at the end. A bottleneck of rock smacks into him from behind. The pressure is released by a bigger rock. The rock breaks the boulder in pieces. This reveals a slope drop-off behind the dead end. Rock after boulder after rock falls down the slope cliff. Krayphiss is revealed from under, gripping the edge of the cliff as rock runs over him. He grips tighter not to fall as the rocks tear into his back. After the final rock, he still feels weight on him. He feels tension on his leg and turns around with his back to the cliff, still holding on, to see Ornock gripping his foot. With his sword in his other hand, he curses. "Fly, you beast." Ornock dangles from side to side holding on to Krayphiss' foot. And displays his snake-like tongue briefly before saying wise words. Ornock extends his wings out. And move them down to create wing gust after placing his black smoke bottom to the slope for balance. His wings flap, he thrust into air still with his hand on Krayphiss, taking him with him. Krayphiss holds on as they are now in the air over the terrain of sky fields. After doing his best to maintain composure. And keep an eye on Ornock. Krayphiss drops his sword. Ornock reaches with his hand around Krayphiss' throat and bends, leaning into Krayphiss. "You seem to have lost something," he says. Before Krayphiss could speak, Ornock says, "I'll help you get it," and dives down while choking Krayphiss. The dive makes the wind pick up and gives a high-pitched screech. At this moment, Krayphiss remembers the sonara and pulls it out. Halfway to the ground, he shoves it into Ornock's mouth, burning him in the process. Ornock lets go of him and sonar screams as it loops back upward towards the sky. Krayphiss drops into the field like a meteor, causing a slide boulder-sized crater. The ground shakes and dust kicks up. After he whips dirt off his face and clears the dust, he sees a silhouette of Ornock flying off in the distance. Krayphiss walks slowly with bruises out of the crater to see Trinu running off in the distance and his sword in the ground. He walks up and grabs it. A breeze blows by his face as he looks in the distance towards Ing Forest. This reminds him to retrieve what is left of the necklace. He looks at the 3 seashells and then to the forest. Krayphiss holsters his sword and turns his back to the forest as he walks back to Shadowfoot. Chapter 3. The heart wants what it wants. In a small dead forest nearby on a mountain sits a meeting of daylight cave people. Several people crowd around one man. In Deer Will Adder and a Trina's skull mask, Sult lashes out in front of his followers. "Over a century and not a word nor sight from this impostor of Ong," says Sult. "Our own people pushed us out, but these lands accepted us. No judgment, no shortcomings. I dare not share with that man," Sult angrily says. One of the members say, "You see the size of him. He can eat for the rest of us. He's bigger and stronger than anyone here," says another. Sult looks up from his angry stoop. "He's a man. Do not make him more than this," says Sult. One of the women steps forward. "There is enough food in Shadowfoot. Sult, we do not have to quarrel." Sult calms himself and walks to the woman and places his hand on the woman's skin. "Finlar," he says, referring to the woman's name. "But we must, you see. If not, the next excuse of a man will come from Aang and push us out. Besides, for all we know, this one might want to already," says Sult. The seductive vibe of Sult grasped the woman's attention. "You're sure he's from Aang?" she asked. "Look at his cloth, Finlar. It's the same as ours once was. He comes from where we once did." An older member asks Sult, "I'm sure you are to enlighten us as to how we run off an invulnerable man." Sult turns around and walks back to the middle of the crowd. "Do you all remember how the light found me?" All 15 people bow their heads before answering yes. "I wanted belonging as we all did," says Sult. "That's when the light of the cave found me." says Salt before looking down to recall the past. That's when those I thought loved me proved me right, it was just a facade, says Salt. He looks back up and walks directly to the older member. He is just a man, which means like us he looks for purpose and acceptance. You seen his face when I broke his necklace. It was as if I crushed the dream of a child, says Salt, turning around to all members. The old man wasted no time deciphering Salt's intentions. You wish to make him one of us, says the man. This would be correct, says Salt. Like you said, you crushed his dreams, my lord, forgive me, but he's not exactly looking to be caught as after that. He believed that necklace was a woman. I don't know how I know this. But I do, says Salt, staring off into nowhere. The invulnerable man has a heart, says Salt, turning to the women of the group. Finlar says, I wish not to love no other but you, my lord. Salt walks back to her once more. Face to face, place his forehead to hers and smile. I know, Finlar. I know. Salt looks up at behind the woman to the other. The impostor of Aang wants her. This causes the other members to gaze upon the woman behind her. This is a lie, she says. I stabbed him in the face, says the woman. Salt walks towards her. As the tallest woman of 5 in the group with locks to her belly button. The woman defies the claims by her leader. He showed mercy to you, Zomu, says Salt. I have no recollection of this, my lord, says Zoma, trying not to look in Salt's face. Salt walks around her and says, surely you do, my heart. He could have crushed you to a crisp and choose not, I saw. Zoma's breathing picking up from the presence of her leader so close to her. Salt has a lust of an effect with the women of the group. Salt lure the women to confuse lust with love as a way to control them. This is the power of daylight cave magic. One of the men says she will bring him into the fold. This is flawless, my lord. Salt, now feeling secure in himself, says yes. Zomu steps forward and says unconvincingly. For the health of ours, I shall make you proud, my love. We will await the arrival of you both by the light of the cave, my heart. Salt says, while holding his hand to his chest near his heart. Zoma bows her head before she is handed a bone sword by Finlar. Finlar kisses her and says, not a hair harmed of you. Zoma nods before the group parts with her. She turns and teleports down the mountain. At the tail end of one of 3 rivers in Shadowfoot, Krayphiss rinse himself of the fight with Ornoch. It is past midday now and an hour before dark. Laying next to him by the rocks on shore arm his belongs, including his sword. 3 shells. Cloth garment. Sonara and freshly killed lizard he plans for dinner. Stuck in thought, Krayphiss begins to have a flashback. He drips water from the river across his arms and legs as he stands waist-high staring down the river towards where grass ends and rock starts. The daydream is coming now and he dare not stop it. Flashback. Krayphiss is back in Aang with his wife Akana and their cloth hut warming up by a fire in the fall. Kray holds her and then she puts more wood in fire. I know you're only pretending to be cold to be near me, Kata. She says. Krayphiss rubs her arm and says, I could be cold. Akana looks up to Krayphiss and holds back a smile. You? As big as a tree nuu and you're cold, she sarcastically asks. Maybe, he says. She finally smiles before looking away. Hey, I got you to show teeth, says Krayphiss. Does this means you forgive me, he asks. Akana says. It's not that easy to win me back after what you said, Kata. But there is a will and a way, right, he asks. Akana turns towards Krayphiss. And moves her braids to the side. She stares him in the eyes and shows vulnerability. If it was anyone else, of course not, she says while moving a lock from Krayphiss' face to see his eyes. They lean in to kiss and are interrupted by Drisk coming in from outside. Mother, is the fire ready, he asks. This breaks up Krayphiss and Akana. I just started it, she says while getting up walking towards it. Drisk removes his cloak pouch to reveal wood. I ask for 1 stick from each tent nearby and look what I recovered, he says. Krayphiss looks at Drisk's pouch before saying. Drisk. Cunning is not too far removed from lying. Drisk becomes slightly defensive. It's just one stick dokaleih, which means father. Son, we can't keep this. Drisk weakens his shoulders in frustration. Akana walks between them and say. He's only trying to help Krayphiss, what harm is one stick? Drisk regains his confidence with his eyes big. He is grateful his mother took his side. Krayphiss raises his eyebrow at his son while Akana's back is turned. I'll allow it this once, but no more shortcuts. I want you to gather from the forest, not kin. Says Krayphiss. I promise, father, says Drisk, bowing in a silly manner. Krayphiss breaks from his stern posture. Get out of here, says Krayphiss, rolling his eyes. Drisk runs up to hug him before leaving. Akana turns around not knowing of this and walks into the hug. All three hugs. She laughs. Okay, what is this, she says before embracing the hug. Flashback over. Krayphiss stops a single tear before resuming with his wash. Once satisfied, he goes for his cloth. As he turns, he sees a woman slowly walking out of the nearby rocks. Krayphiss grabs his sword and jumps out the water. The woman is startled by this and puts her hands up. I have no weapons, please. She says. Back up, says Krayphiss. She tends to herself by stopping. I come in no form of threats or malice. She says. Krayphiss says. I trust that you will lie. She turns around, showing no hiding blades. See. No arsenal. Why are you here, asks Krayphiss. Zoma gazes at Krayphiss' arms and chest covered in the river before making her eyes to his member below his waist. She is indeed impressed before regaining focus. May we do this properly, she asks. Krayphiss searches her face for answers before realizing he hasn't thrown himself and is still naked. He uses his sword to cover up before backing up to his cloth. She feels slightly embarrassed for him and turns away slightly. Krayphiss takes this moment to put on his cloth while still facing her. She looks out her peripheral to make sure the coast is clear to gaze respectfully. Once done, she introduces herself. I am Zomu. Friend of Salt. Lord of Daylight, she says. Krayphiss grabs his sword and other belongings. I am not looking for your hand in friendship, my lady. He says. Zomu excitedly tries to move closer to talk and is halted by Krayphiss' hand. Don't. He says. She stops again. Maybe we started off on the wrong foot earlier today. She says. She tries to continue when Krayphiss interrupts her. Wrong foot. What does this mean? He searches her face again and starts to realize who she is. You're the one who threw a spear at me from earlier. He says before raising his sword in attack mode. Zomu says. No. I mean yes, but that was to protect my kin while putting her hands back up. Protect. I do remember it quite differently, my lady. I remember your kin were the ones who engaged first. Says Krayphiss. We've never seen anyone but us in the mountains. You must know, like you, we are cautious of others, she says. That's his name. Salt. This Lord of Light. Your friend. He's the one who mocked me, says Krayphiss. My lord means well. He is not what you seen, I plead this to you. Says Zomu, bowing to Krayphiss. He scoffs at me and now sends you to end me because he can't. Some lord he is. Says Krayphiss, dropping his sword as he now sees Zomu bowing in front of him as no threat. I'll be kind and give you a chance to leave now. Tell your lord to fight his own quarrels as a man. Says Krayphiss before turning his back. Why did you spare me, asks Zomu. This stops Krayphiss in his tracks. He looks over his shoulder at her, still bowing but looking up to him. Krayphiss acts as if he doesn't understand. I'm sorry, he says. Earlier back in the mountain. You had a clear chance to kill me and yet you didn't. Says Zomu. I didn't know you were a lady, that's all, says Krayphiss, still turned to her. Zomu stands up slowly. I mean no offense, but I do not believe you. Krayphiss turns halfway. Tell yourself whatever you like, my lady. He says. If this was true, why would you attempt on my life just now? Asks Zoma. Krayphiss chooses not to answer and says that will be all for the day, my lady, before dropping his head slightly and turning back to walk away. Zoma walks up to Krayphiss' back. And he instantly turns around with the tip of his sword now at Zoma's neck. Do not do this again, he says. Zoma tightens her jaw and says, I wish to know more about you. If you are sincerely against this, then strike me down now. Krayphiss' sword arm was extended, keeping a distance between him and Zoma. As he walks close to her, he keeps the tip of the blade at her throat but folds his arm while asking, How do I know you're not sent to friend and kill me? How do I know you're not a representation of your lord's mockery towards me? Now face to face, Krayphiss' breathing picks up slightly, but he maintains. In this moment Zoma decides to be vulnerable beyond what she wishes to allow. Because I am bound to you by my feelings, she says. Krayphiss allows his feelings for a few seconds as his lips touch hers. He kisses her before saying Akana and coming back to himself, pushing her away. Lies and trickery, he says, walking off. Zoma pleads with him. I've overstepped. I am sorry, she says. Krayphiss throws his blade into the mountain and jumps on it. He climbs away with his blade before night falls. Zoma stands there slowing her breathing while watching Krayphiss disappear into the skyscraper of mountain above. Krayphiss walks the terrain trying to block out previous encounters in his head but can't. Out of nowhere his waistline starts to buzz with his own body temperature. The day is now night and he needs to find bed and a fire for his lizard. The buzzing does not stop and he tries to listen to his legs walking to drown it out. Eventually he gives in to his waist and picks a corner of shade randomly on a top ledge. The ledge is not an ideal spot as anyone walking by will notice, but Krayphiss has to address his waist soon. Krayphiss jumps to the ledge with one arm and pulls 3 nearby rocks in for cover so he's not as visible in this corner. He sits and pulls out 3 shells from his pocket. Next he weaves a string from his cloth to make a new necklace out of. Kada, he says. Krayphiss can barely hold his guilt in. He pauses and stares at the rock. I did not plan this. She's way with evil, Kada, he says. The sound of the quiet moment fills the air. Can you forgive, he asks. The only sound now is the rocks beneath him as he represses himself. Krayphiss eagerly ties the knot on the necklace. Akana, please answer me, he says before he cries. I love you. You must know this. Speak to me. A tear drops on one of the shells and Krayphiss slows down his weeping. He scrapes over several smaller rocks and dirt for a pillow and lays holding his newfound necklace with his pouch and sword near. He tries to sleep but can't. Krayphiss stares at the rock that hides him and listens to the night. I don't know why I'm here, Kada, he says. Our son would be an old man singing songs of young days to his grandchild. If not for me going against your worries, says Krayphiss. I don't know why I go against you, says Krayphiss. Krayphiss makes another dirt pillow but slightly smaller for the necklace. Remember when I first saw you, Kada? The necklace does nothing as he places it on the dirt. You don't have to talk, I know you're mad, says Krayphiss. I was scared you tell me no. But you agreed to walk the forest with me. You barely knew me yet you trusted me that day. Krayphiss daydreams while talking. I haven't said this to you, but since that day I promised to myself to never make you feel as if you shouldn't. His eyes still and locked onto the rock. I broke that promise with myself to you, Kada. I walked the forest with another woman, says Krayphiss. I deserve less than silence from you. I lost our only son and now you. If this is true, I don't know why I am here, says Krayphiss. Krayphiss looks back at the necklace and says, What do you mean? I do not feel for her. This is not the words that would be placed on your lips, he says softly, confused. He sits up. I think our love could stand any test, he says. He looks hard at the necklace for a moment. You want me to walk outside of our bond? He asks. Kada, I know I have angered you, but listen to yourself, this is mad. You are not just seashells to me, he says. Krayphiss now sits up and his back to his necklace. You should sleep after that proposal, Kata. You must be tired, he says with his arms crossed in a defiant posture. The sound of the wind blows and his stubborn lasts only seconds before he looks out the side of his eye at the necklace. I'll take hearing your voice no matter the emotion behind it. I'm glad you decided to talk to me again, he says in a softer voice. Krayphiss lays back in his position next to the necklace and pulls the dirt pillow closer. I have no urge to eat till morning. I just want to lay next to you, he says before resting his eyes and sleeping. Chapter 4. There's only one queen of this heart. Zomu sneak into a bird nest. The birds left for the morning to find food. Zomu sneaks quietly, making sure no bird stayed back to protect the nest. She's clear after checking each nest silently. After brushing away leaves, she eyes what she wants. Zomu tests the density of the egg by putting her ear up to it and tapping it with her finger. She is pleased the bird has not formed yet. The egg is the size of her hand as she stores it in her pouch, while making sure the egg is snugged securely. Tiny legs appear on her arm with her head turned. A hairy spider half the size of her head creeps on her, his weight hidden by the light touch of his fur. Zomu's intuition slowly redirects her to the spider. She carefully stays still, keeping her eye on the spider as it slowly crawls up. The egg is now secure, allowing her to exchange it for the bone dagger in her pouch. The spider must have found a spot it likes because it reveals its veins drenched in venom. Before it could strike, a bone pick darts across Zomu's face from above at lightning speed, taking the spider off her arm, killing it. Zomu looks up to see Kray dangling from a vine in the wall. Before she could speak, he signals to her to keep quiet by putting his finger over his lips. Kray whispers, "The birds are coming. Give me your hand." He reaches out to her. In the distance, the sound of wings flapping and bird cries make their way into the cave. Zomu looks back to see nothing but hear the wing flap get louder. The cliff exit cut out in the mountain displaying the clouds no longer feels like a sight to marvel at. It now glooms with darkness in the bright sky. Zomu now desperately reaches out towards Krayphiss for his hand. Zomu whispers, "Hurry. Hurry, they're close." Krayphiss extends his bent leg wrapped around the vine to give him length and grabs Zomu's arm. Unfortunately, Krayphiss now is slowly losing his grip with the vine as his leg no longer locks him to it. He starts to slip. He looks to the exit to hear the wing flap as if it's a loud airplane engine. With all his might, Krayphiss throws Zomu up to him, grabbing her by her waist and relocking his legs around the vine. Both Krayphiss and Zomu are now facing opposite directions. Zomu has her head at Krayphiss' waist and Krayphiss has his head at hers. If not for the kiss earlier, the situation would seem awkward. But somehow both parties are uncomfortable with how much they are at ease with the situation. The birds landing in the cave takes Krayphiss and Zomu out of the trance and back into the moment. 7 birds the size of cars. The birds instantly seize the missing egg, but before they can think to look up, Krayphiss swings the vine and drops Zomu and himself onto a top pathway near the ceiling. Krayphiss takes Zomu's dagger and nails the vine into the wall of the cave for it not to swing back and give away their position. Both are long gone before the birds look up for clues. Zomu and Krayphiss hike the Sierra until they believe they are at a safe distance to stop. They take cover behind a mountain ridge just in case the birds followed. "Thank you," says Zomu. As Kray looks over the ridge for birds, he says, "After following you, I noticed your husband wasn't with you." "He is not my husband," Zomu says defensively. Krayphiss still looks in the sky while saying, "Forgive me, but your showmanship said otherwise earlier. We are not bound to one by the light. The light frees us to love who we want," says Zomu. "So you are a unit," says Kray as he now looks at her. "He is my leader, yes," she says. Krayphiss' facial expression shows he is displeased with her answer. "You know how I mean," he says while sitting his back to the ridge, no longer concerned about the birds. Zomu looks seriously at Krayphiss and says, "Why would the matter of my heart concern you?" Krayphiss answers back quickly, "It doesn't." This upsets Zomu. Why are you stone-headedly blocking your feelings for me? She asks, hurting emotionally. I do not have feelings for you, says Krayphiss. Your past mistakes your words, she says. Krayphiss stays silent. Zomu brushes the hair out her face as the wind picks up. At least tell me your name. Still positioned away from her. Krayphiss glazes his eye in her direction as if he's conflicted. I am Krayphiss, he says. Krayphiss, she says. Krayphiss says. Yes, my mother named me. She once told me Krayphiss means the Tree King in spirit language. I have no clue if she's right, he says. Zomu calms herself while saying. My father once told me of the god named Aang. Old stories about a man tall as trees and strong as stone. I believe this is why Salt is intimidated by you, she says. Krayphiss looks at her. I knew you were sent to end me, he says. Zomu looks at him and says. Salt wants to end the fighting and join with you in unity. Krayphiss laughs. This can't be anything other than playwrights. Why would I join him, he asks. Zomu is once again offended. What is wrong with unity in the light? She says. What is this light you keep repeating? He asks, still in jovial mood. Zomu flames up white and says. The light is a power sent here beyond the gods. The light chooses those who see through errors of mortal life. Salt's choice to save those he could from the obedience of mortality. She says. Krayphiss seems unmoved by her abilities. Is this why you turned to fire, he asks. Zomu powers down back to normal and says no. All in Aang can achieve this if they practice. We are punished and stripped of this by day, but the light gives us a chance. And frees us from what the gods say we are allowed to have. Says Zomu. I was wrong about the gods. At least the one I saw. Says Krayphiss. She allowed me to look for my boy, says Krayphiss. What is his name, asks Zomu. Krayphiss dazes for a moment before speaking. His name is Drisk. Says Kray softly. Zomu sits up. What happened to him, she asks. With no emotion he answers. Taken, he says. Sensing the tension and intensity in his words, Zomu moves closer. She matches his voice when asking by whom. He redirects his eyes to her. There are themes more evolved than your savior's light in the mountains, says Krayphiss. After silence, Krayphiss gets up and speaks loudly, indicating a change in mood. If they were trailing, we would have been made by now, says Krayphiss. Zoe gets up and looks back to see nothing. Krayphiss pokes her pouch with a red letter of Z, winning her attention. Make sure you cook it before it hatch, he says. Zomu looks down at her pouch as Kray walks away. Once she notices, she follows him. Maybe I can help you with your son, she suggests. Not to be crass, but there's no faith in what you speak, he says. Maybe you're wrong, maybe he can help you, says Zomu. The coward who make light of what I hold dear. I think not, says Krayphiss, walking down the mountain. We all can use for help at times, she says. Krayphiss doesn't speak, with his back turned as if stung by her words. Kray lets out a sigh and stops. He turns while saying. Is this why you indulge him? You think he's helping you, he asks. He cares for me, she says defiantly. Your mother cares for you, your father cares for you. Salt uses you, says Krayphiss. My father spent more time in the woods than with his family, says Zomu. These words cause Krayphiss to see a ghost figure of his son behind Zomu as she talked. They say it was winter that did it, but my mother died of a broken heart, she says. The words broken heart starts to whisper by many in the wind. Zomu continues to talk as this happens, making Krayphiss think she can't hear it. The figure of his son behind her looks desperate, eager and sad. The wind drowns her voice out from all sides. Broken heart. With his family. King of the forest. From one ear to the next. Krayphiss blinks his eyes and shakes his head. The voices and shadow of his son are now gone. The sound of his name repeatedly comes in slow but loud. Krayphiss. Are you okay? asks Zomu. Terrific, he says before turning back around to walk away. Zomu walks with him. May I ask one more thing, says Zomu. No, says Kray, still walking. Who's Akina? asks Zomu. I said not to ask, says Krayphiss. Zomu goes silent for a second, following behind Kray. Is she Drisk, mother? asks Zomu. I am warning you. Stop talking, says Krayphiss. Zomu sees no reason to stop as she feels Krayphiss is just putting a wall up. That's her necklace, isn't it? That's why you hate Salt, she says. Krayphiss turns around annoyed. I do not have to answer questions from someone broken in her own definition of love. I love my wife and plan to see her in the next realm once I get my son back, but until then I'm unable to enter the forest for which I'm said to be king. I don't hide from my responsibility and do not need help from those who do. There is no partition of respect found in me of your leader. Your savior, or whatever name deemed to fit your poison. Do not ail me with your presence again. Or I will take your life, yelled Krayphiss. As he walks away, Zomu do not follow and sheds a tear. I wish not to ail you, so I shall respect your wishes. Another tear falls. But I am still unconvinced you would harm me. Not because you are incapable, but because I now believe I remind you of her. Says Zomu. I hope you find your son, she says before walking off. Krayphiss looks down, knowing he went too far. After letting out a deep sigh and gripping the remainder of the shell necklace, he continues down the hill. 4 days later. In the deepest caves and valleys underneath the mountains lays a temple carved out of stone into the wall of the tunnels. Its one entrance, 90 steps tall, was also its only exit. Zomu dreads these steps as she makes her way back to Salt. Salt lays in his hammock feeding his krug deer meat near a water well. The other Daylight Cave members lay affectionately around Salt as Zomu approaches. The others notice her before Salt. Zomu, says Finlar. Another asks. Is the god with you? Zomu is startled by the reactions. The old man reads her face and says. He is not. She failed us. Salt breaks through the group. Nonsense, Callan, you made mention of his size before. You know that a man of his caliber trails her shadow. Give him time, says Salt. Zomu downs her head in shame. The members look worried as Salt stiffs up to her words. He will not show, she says. There is an underchatter amongst the members while Salt stares at Zomu in disappointment. My kin. May I have a word with our troubled sister in private? He says. This stops the talking and the Daylight Cave members slowly descends into the shadows of the cave. Finlar hugs Zomu, who's still head down, and says. No matter the future, I'm joyful to see you return. Before slipping away. Only Salt and his krug lay eyes upon Zomu now. I do not understand. His eyes says he feels for you. Says Salt as he leaves his hammock. Zoe wishes not to stare up and stays head down. He is bound to another. It's the necklace you lay waste to. It is the property of his wife, she says. I will not continue this without the privilege of the essence of your face. Look at me, says Salt. As he gently grabs Zomu's chin and moves her face up. She stares into his daring eyes. This breaks you. I can see it in your eyes, says Salt. I am broken by my failure to you, my love. Says Zomu. Salt takes his hand off her chin. I know there is more to this emotion than you confess. He does have a hold on you, says Salt. If this were true, he would never come between us, my love. Says Zomu. Salt walks back to his hammock and brushes the head of his krug. What was his convictions, my love, says Salt, looking back with his back to her. He is not a god, but granted stay from them for his child. His child has been taken by what his eyes tell me bears evil. His strength and invulnerability is shaped by his devotion to his family. She says. Salt looks off into the cave's darkness. So the gods have them a friend in mortals, he says. Zomu breaks from her shame and walks forward. He is stubborn, but I believe with your leadership and direction we can save his child from this evil and restore his mortality. This would show him your greatness, my love. Says Zomu. His mortality? Say more of this. Says Sult. Zomu walks closer and hugs Sult by the waist. He is bound by his family. Once he enters the forest of Aang, his invulnerability is gone. He wants this with his family. I can feel it in his voice. And you can give him this, my love. Says Zomu. Sult whispers to himself. And there you are. Weakness. Weakness? Asked a befuddled Zoe. Sult turns around as Zomu backs up. If he is not to join us, we must not share with his nature. You know this, my love, says Sult. Zomu begins to breathe heavy. You knew he would not take. I was a vessel for scripture. She says. You are not weak like the others. You have not failed your kin, you have saved them, Zomu says. Sult. You should see the look in his eyes. The love for his wife and son. Zomu begins to tear up. We cannot take this from him. She says. Sult walks towards her and plays with her locks. And what of our love? He rejects it and you defend him for it. Says Sult. I am loyal to the light and its prophecy in you. You told me the light frees us from mortality, not to take it. Says a slightly upset Zomu. Sult senses her mood and begins to match it. Who is the one who feels betrayed here? You and your belief in him over me. Or me and my belief in you for the light, yells Sult. Zomu falls to her knees slowly while saying. I cannot do this. I cannot be a part of this. I cannot bring darkness to a love so pure. Sult changes his mood and kneels to be face to face with her. He has corrupted my once most powerful. I can leave you out of this one, my love. But we must address your way from the light once I return. Zomu looks up dry-teared at Sult. Tell me, my love. If not to share with Krayphiss, why do you share with me and Finlar, she asks. Sult smiles and says. Our love comes from the commitment of freedom. Not the shackle of labels, this is why we're pure, my dear. Sult kisses her lips and her eyes close. Though she doesn't say she is indifferent to what once hold her close to Sult. Sult stands up and says. I will return to you when this is over. Stay here. Zoma nods her head in agreement. And Sult walks into the darkness. Chapter 5. A tug at the soul. Trees are scarce in Shadowfoot. There are 3 to 4 per every 4 miles. The trees don't bear many leaves. To those of daylight this is not important, but to Krayphiss making a replica of the Sonara this is. Sometimes Kray wonders if the Ornok cries at the rain, knowing it provides the material for Sonaras. Krayphiss has his locks tied to keep bugs out as he climbs a tree, for its top branches rushed with leaves. His teeth clamp down on the blade of a bone dagger he made from a deer carcass as he reaches his destination. He forbids himself to admit to himself that he thinks of Zomu. He feels great betrayal that his heart could love outside of his wife. Kray takes the blade out his mouth to cut the leaves perfectly, not to ruin them, and place them in his cloth. Before he could climb down, a bird lands in his shoulder. Feeling annoyed, Kray tries to scare the bird by swinging around it, only to lose balance and drop to the branch below. The bird is unfazed, bouncing up and down on a now shaking branch. In its normal posture, the bird looks as if it mocks Krayphiss. Kray wants to ignore the bird and go down the tree, until he sees its beak with a bit of blood on it. He squints his eyes to look closer when the bird jumps at him. Kray blocks his face with his hand and the bird flies off. Kray looks up to see the bird is gone, but feels a pinch in his hand. He looks to his hand to see the same blood on the bird in his hand in the form of a beak stab. Before he could move his lips to talk, he feels dizzy and rolls his eyes to the back of his skull before falling out of the tree, taking branches with him. In a small dent below the tree he lays passed out. Hours pass. The flexion of light on rock as the sun goes down catches Krayphiss' eyes to open. Buzzing of insects helps him come to his senses. He lets out a moan of slight pain before moving his hands and feet. Normally he feels little to no pain. At this moment the pain starts to fade, but he notes in his mind the pain is taking longer to go away. He wonders if Jatua's power is done with him. Krayphiss swings his arm to use for balance to get up. This is when he sees the bird blood on his hand. He starts to think this is the suspect behind his slow pain. He studies the mark in his hand as his pain leaves his body. The tiny dent in his hand leaves too. Abnormally, the color of the blood stain leaves as well. Krayphiss now questions if he is seeing things again. He knows his mindset has changed drastically since he left the forest a century ago. As he rises, he checks his cloth to see the leaves still there. Krayphiss fixes his latch connected to his sword pouch and spits out saliva once he stands. He's even more dizzy standing on ground than in the tree. Krayphiss places his hand on the nearby trees to walk. He gets a few feet before the world stops spinning. He soon hears a voice. He feels great warmth from this voice. The feeling of love and euphoria showers over him. Kata, the voice says. A voice of ages. Kray haven't heard this voice up close in years. He turns once he hears it again. Kata, it says. Once he fully turns, he sees his wife Akina standing peacefully right behind him. You are. But you can't be. You're not you, says Krayphiss softly in shock. Her soft skin and blessed smile lures him in. And yet it is Kata. I've missed you, she says. She walks over slowly to hug him as his eyes follow her. He doesn't move. She lays her head on his chest. It's over now, Kata. We're no longer separated by time, she whispers. Krayphiss' arms are extended away while she hugs him as not to touch her. The wind blows the smell of the forest from her hair. The warmth of her skin. All signs tells him this is real. Krayphiss relaxes his arms and drops them soon to find them wrapped around her. With his chin rested onto her head, he says, it's really. You are better than dreams of you, says Krayphiss. I'm here now, she whispers. Kray's eyes enlarges as he break up the hug. What does this means of Drisk? And the faith if the beast? Is it dead? Is he alive, asked Krayphiss desperately. Akina rested her hand in his, which lay on her shoulder. Our son wakes us in the forest. He has your heart and determination. Somehow he freed himself from the beast, which killed it, and the gods brought me back to him, she says with a tear in her eyes. My son, he says, not knowing whether to smile or cry. Akina gently places her hand over Krayphiss' face. His breathing picks up slightly. She searches through his eyes. I can hear the pain of your heart through your eyes. You have tormented your soul with this for too long. Walk with me to our son. Walk with me like when we first met, she says. Akina starts to walk off while holding Krayphiss' hand. At first he doesn't move, but eventually he follows her slowly. The sun now rests in the east. Within an hour they make it to Sky Fields. They walk past miles of humming tree nu at rest. Still holding her hand, Kray asks about their son. Has he grown since last, Kata? Has his hair grown, asked Krayphiss. Akina smiles while looking forward. Our son told me in death the evil revealed it took care of him for its own purpose. Not to age him, she says. He daydreams with curiosity of her words. Hours later they are within a mile of approaching Ang forest. I do not think I've prepared for this, says Krayphiss. He trembles to his knees in the grass as he has a panic attack. You are fine, Kata. Breathe, says Akina as she meets him at the grass. Krayphiss slightly dry heaves through his words. Call out to him. Drisk can meet us halfway, he barely says. She places her hand on his face and turns it to hers. He might not hear us. We are almost there, Kata. You can do this, she says. As he makes it to his feet, the wind breaks by a blade from behind him. An object moves between the two, traveling extremely fast. It digs in the ground in front of them, revealing itself to be a spear. Krayphiss looks back to see Zomu walking up from afar. Zomu, he says. As she gets close, she says, I must break from our accord and see you again. As your life is at risk, she says. I have no will for this, says Krayphiss. Akina looks triumphantly at Zomu while saying, his life is back where it belongs. At his wife's side. Zomu stops walking and says, I would have been here earlier, but the bird my leader sent to track you made it hard for me to follow it. Why aren't you acknowledging my wife? She's talking to you, says Krayphiss. Zomu turns her head slow but stern. And looks Akina from bottom to top before redirecting back towards Krayphiss. She is not your wife. This is a vision from within you by a spell. She says. Krayphiss searches Zomu's eyes. Where is this coming from? He says. Is this who tempts your heart and keep you from me? Ask Akina as she traces Krayphiss's face. Our son is in the darkly lead forest waiting Kata. Leave this woman where she be. And join us. She says while resting her head on his chest before looking intimately at Zomu. Kray begins to breathe heavily. Zomu stares back and says. Remember what you said about being used. Ask yourself why she insists on leading you to Aang. Krayphiss backs up from Akina and looks at both women. I was upset I wasn't thinking and I divulge your vulnerability to Sult. I don't know how, but she is of his making to kill you once you enter the forest. Says Zomu as she picks up her spear. Kata, is this true? Asks Kray passionately. Akina, finding it hard to look in his eyes, says. I never thought I would see the day you choose this roughing over your own flesh and blood, Kata. Zomu talks before Krayphiss could speak. Ask her about the evil in the mountains, she says. Akina folds her arms while saying the Ornok has perished by the hands of our son. There is no need for this. I never told you its name. I didn't know its name until after I saw you last, he says. Akina tightens her jaw. Akina looks once more at Zomu in pity and say, you will never experience the love he has for me. In a rage, Zomu pierces Akina's stomach with the spear. No! Cries Krayphiss as he pushes Zomu back with his massive strength. Zomu is pushed back 4 yards and knocked unconscious. Krayphiss catches Akina as she collapses. He cradles her in his arms. Kata, he says softly. Our son awaits us, Kata, he says, brushing her hair while her eyes close peacefully. He looks away at Zomu passed out across the grass when he hears laughing. The laughter grows louder as he turns his head back to his wife. Akina slowly looks his way while opening her eyes, laughing. What an insufferable waste of a man. Too stupid for his own death, she laughs before looking at him. Her eyes glow white and he drops her before stepping back. What is this, he cries. Her voice goes from high to deep cycle low when she says. A waste of a good spell, Kata. She then laughs as her body glows white before disappearing like smoke. Out of Aang forest slowly appears the daylight cave people walking closely to each other as they approach from the far. Once he is close enough, Sult says. She truly was a good spell. Krayphiss sifts through the smoke clearing to see he's outnumbered by his enemy. You! This is all from you, yells Krayphiss. No, this is all from you. I warned you I would not rest until you did. Now look at my lady. Says Sult, pointing to Zomu passed out. Krayphiss looks as well concerned he pushed her too hard. She's made her choice and now the light shall make its own. You can have her. Says Sult before going from serious to laughter. Krayphiss unveils his sword. You mock me no more. I shall send you on a journey to the gods, says Krayphiss. As you wish, Kata. Says Sult as the daylight cave people flare up white. Some run and other teleport Kray's way as Finlar heads towards Zomu. Finlar decides to stay with Zomu and hold her while the fight takes place. Zomu. Wake for me, my love, she says. One by one from all sides the daylight cave people pop in and out of existence all around Krayphiss as he swings his sword. Krayphiss is sliced and stabbed repeatedly. If not for his invulnerability he would be dead 5 seconds into the fight. Kray's size and movement keeps them from piling onto him as he moves back and forth blocking what he can. Two Krugs run out of the forest to help their masters win the fight. One bites at his leg before he kicks it, rendering it the same fate as Zomu. The other Krug scratches Krayphiss deep with its claws across his back, causing a deep gash which drops him to his knee and forces him to take a spear to the side of his temple. Krayphiss grabs the Krug by the tail and throws it at the person who threw the spear before ripping it out his temple. The member is hit by the Krug before teleporting. "Archers!" yelled Sult. Suddenly all the members step back and throw their spears all at once at Krayphiss. He is able to block the attacks front to front, but several enter him from the back and drops him to his second knee. Sult lets out an enormous scream. "Die, you brainless meat!" he yells. The members resume to swarming Krayphiss. The spears he blocked laid at their feet. Once the spears were grabbed, they teleport the spears that they threw. Krayphiss fell to the ground and his body touched the grass as much as it could. The many spears inside him propped his body up like a kickstand. Still no signs of blood, but Kray laid lifeless. "The god is no more. It is a miracle," says Sult. Before either member could walk to retrieve their spear, Krayphiss spoke. "Do not do, ask I do, son," says Krayphiss. The members look confused. Krayphiss steadies his hands as he starts to move. "No. No. This is not. This is not. You must die." "Why won't you die?" cries Sult. Krayphiss jumps from his knees to his feet and all spears shoot out of him as he screams. "Ah!" All members teleport to dodge the spears. Krayphiss grabs his sword and says, "Someone will die. Someone's time is up." "Kill him," screams Sult as they rush Krayphiss after picking their spears back up. Sult throws his spear, hitting Krayphiss' sword out his hand. The next spear thrown Krayphiss catches with his teeth and in a rage bites down on, snapping it in half. Both parts drop in his hands. The bite marks create a sharp edge for the bottom half. All throughout the fight, Krayphiss has been studying the Daylight Cave members' moments and predicting where they would most likely teleport to. He now reveals this by correctly predicting where two members teleport to when he swings the broken spear with both hands. Krayphiss stabs them in the chest as they reappeared, killing them instantly. Sult and the others are shocked. The lady spin kicks at both Krayphiss' legs, but his rage keeps him from falling. And he pick both women up by their hair as a cliché caveman would. "One last chance for you two. Save what's left of your men," says Krayphiss. The women teleport from his grip. Krayphiss in a blind rage drops the broken spear and grabs his sword. The next member to teleport his way, Krayphiss spins as he swings his sword. He beheads them. This happens to be the older member of the group. The member's head drops in one of the ladies' lap, who screams in a horror. The mood of the fight has grown grim. And a member from behind Krayphiss jumps on his back while in white flare to choke him out. Krayphiss stabs himself, connecting the blade to the member behind him. As the member dies, Krayphiss' blade somehow turns white in flame. Krayphiss pulls his now white fire of a sword out of his stomach as the member drops behind him. Sult breathes heavily and says, "You have ensured a fight to the death, kata." Krayphiss points his sword and says, "Only my wife calls me that." Their conversation is broken up by the wind and the sound of an air sonar. "What is that?" some say in the back of Sult. Krayphiss puts his sword down. "Welcome to hell," says Krayphiss before Ornok drops down from the sky, grabbing a member and flying off. The presence of a winged man with horns and a snake tongue sends the remaining members into a panic. Sult stays locked on Krayphiss as he swings at him. His bone spear is broken by Krayphiss' sword. As this happens, the others throw their spears into the night sky at Ornok, who dismembers the man in the sky. Krayphiss swings his sword. And Sult teleports, but Krayphiss chokes him as he reappears, knowing where he would teleport to. The other members dodge Ornok in the back as Krayphiss' rage blinds him from the danger of both enemies. "You mock my wife and son. You endanger Zomu. and the rest of your people. You are a coward unworthy of an honorable death, Sult," says Krayphiss, choking Sult. Ornock dives to take Krayphiss next, which allow him to release Sult from his grip. By now Sult and 5 others including Finlar and an unconscious Zomu are what remains of 15 members. Sult takes this time to grab the remaining of Daylight Cave and teleport to safety. Krayphiss, while being held by Ornock midair, stabs at him, though his hand and wings block the blade. Ornock turns around and makes its way back towards Daylight Cave. Ornock, with Krayphiss in his grasp, jumps inside a member's portal, causing the member's portal to collapse and melting the member's flesh as Krayphiss and Ornock comes out of the next member's teleportation portal, caused the same for that member. Both are dead. Sult and the last 3 members teleport to safety, and Ornock throws Krayphiss in front of him midair before ramming him far away from sky fields. Ornock flyers up, dropping Krayphiss off onto a mountain top. A small crater is created. Ornock hovers over Krayphiss in the sky by flapping its wings. Krayphiss slowly comes to. "I do enjoy our many ways of colliding," says Ornock. Krayphiss whips the dust from his face and grabs his sword, still in white flare. "I'm almost glad what the spell said wasn't true. The pleasure to rip my son out of you is all mine," says Krayphiss, pointing his sword at Ornock. "Dead or alive, my son comes back to me." Ornock grabs the middle of his chest with both hands and opens it. A bluish light unveils from his chest as it opens, with black vines and tentacles reaching out. 6 thick vines extends out of him, revealing Drisk, who is sound asleep. Krayphiss is astounded. "Drisk," he yells. The boy awakes. "Father? Mom told me you would be back tomorrow," he says. Krayphiss reaches for Drisk with his unsworded hand as it shakes. "No worries, son," says Krayphiss as he weeps. "I'm back now," he says. Ornock closes his chest, suddenly putting the boy back to sleep as Krayphiss yells, "No!" In a rage, Krayphiss runs up the wall with all his adrenaline and crouches before propelling himself into the air at Ornock. Once his chest is fully closed, Ornock blocks Krayphiss with its wings, but the force from the propulsion knocks it out the sky towards the ground like a star from the sky. The razor-sharp rock on the mountains breaks their fall. Krayphiss writhes before Ornock. "I have nothing to hold me from dishonoring my own code. I am above nothing to get my son back. Release him to me," says Krayphiss. The Ornock rises and shoots its tongue towards Krayphiss, wrapping it around his throat. Krayphiss tenses his neck up, sweating and crying at the same time. The Ornock is now talking to him telepathically. "Son, as well as he not. My door will not allow me to harm the child, as he is key to my stay. But his father is my toy, as I can become easily fatigued with mere mortals." Krayphiss tenses up so much to keep the Ornock's tongue from choking him, so much his entire body matches his sword. Krayphiss has now achieved white flare and cuts Ornock's tongue off. The creature lets out a Tyrannosaurus belly-like scream that even the gods would hear from the heavens as it flaps its wings, creating a wing gust to push Krayphiss back. Ornock flies high and away, still letting out its halls of hell cry. Krayphiss, still in white flare, lets out his own scream, pointing his sword at Ornock. "I will not rest until you bleed out," he says. "I will not die until you. You hear me? You hear me?" he screams into the night as the Ornock disappears. The white is gone as he drops to his knees. His sword drops beside him. Krayphiss weeps. "Drisk," he says. Krayphiss is lower in mood than he has ever been. His shoulder is met by a woman's hand. "Zomu," he says before looking up. Krayphiss jumps back as his eyes believes he is deceived. The sight of Jada herself stops Krayphiss' tears. "The gods listen when I cry," he softly says. Jada, in her black robe and skin-curled dreads and bronze skin, approaches him. "Your day has darkened since last we met," she says. Krayphiss is still unable to move. "I can't stay long, but I wish to deliver hope to my warrior. You lost so much to achieve so much. Calm your fear and take my hand," she says, extending her hand. Krayphiss cries and grabs her hand. He rushes towards her legs, grabbing them and wrapping himself around them. I'm not a god as they say. I'm a father without a son. Husband without a wife. Why is my faith in darkness? He asked Jada. Jada touches his hair on his head. And says GYHS know their stories before themselves as they are the before. If THYH Lu Mei Lai has bound you to a glory you must path. I choose to you to see this. I know you can see this. You are more than your fellow mortal. You are king of the forest, she says. Jada steps back and says, I am always listening. Kata is always listening. Drisk is always listening as she slowly disappears. Krayphiss crawls towards her. Don't go. Don't go. Please don't go. No more screams of silence. Someone please tell me they love me. He cries before crawling up in the spot she once was in. The rain starts to fall as Krayphiss lays crawled up on the mountain. Before the rain ends he would sleep in the rain and his tears. By morning Krayphiss uses the same river as before to cleanse himself of battle. He wears a newly made sonara on his head. The ground is moist from the rain the night before. The white flames from his flare-up stains bits of blood permanently on his blade now. A part of Krayphiss wishes the gods treat his enemies well, while another believes their deaths are well deserved. He learns the stains are stubborn while washing his blade. His train of thought ends by the scent of another. I won't check you for blades, he says. Krayphiss turns around to see Zomu well rested. I deserve this behavior if you decide to keep, he says. I made it hard to trust me as my foolishness endangered you, says Zomu walking up. You refuse to stay gone because you wish well of me. And I am grateful, says Krayphiss reaching for his cloth. Zomu saves Krayphiss another embarrassing moment by grabbing the cloth for him. And giving it to him. They say the evil is quick. And heartless, says Zomu. This is true, says Kray while toweling off. I don't know how but I felt his presence in my sleep. Says Zomu staring off into nowhere. Such carelessness and cruelty, she says while looking down in shame. The Ornok has no morals. Says Krayphiss putting his pouch on. I felt myself slipping into him. I saw the faces of my brethren. I now know this is because of their deaths. Taken by the evil, says Zomu. Kray attempts to sort his pouch but stops at this moment. The face of another kept me safe. It shielded me from the darkness. Zomu looks at Kray's face. A face like yours but younger, she says. Krayphiss lets go of the handle of his sword, allowing it to drop perfectly in his back holster. My son. He says. Zomu walks closer to Krayphiss. I felt safe with him. As I do when I'm near you. She says. Krayphiss stops her while backing up, placing his hand in between them. My loyalty will always be with my wife, he says. As it should. My apologies. Says Zomu, stopping in her tracks. There was something the spell said. That stays with me, she says. Magic knows nothing of morality. It will do as it must to satisfy itself, says Krayphiss. Yet it spoke my truth. I will never experience a love like the one you have for her. She says, looking into Krayphiss' eyes. Not with salt, no you will not, says Krayphiss. May I ask why you love her, she asks. I am my expressions and morals to her. I'm not a creature to her. It's never about my size why she clings to me. Or cling to me. Says Krayphiss, breaking his front wall of denial about his wife's passing. Somehow I've always knew this. I guess I liked being lied to more. I told myself he cared enough to lie to me. Says Zomu. I was being selfish with my hate. You knew this. Says Zomu. Krayphiss says to her. I was the man who left his family for adventure, if I'm honest with myself. And now I pay for it. Don't let yours feel the same, he says. I do wish to see my sisters again. Says Zomu, holding back tears. There is nothing in Shadowfoot for you. I could never offer you the love your sisters can. Go to them. Says Krayphiss, walking out the water. I plan to, she says. Krayphiss allows himself to give Zomu a friendly hug. He pulls away, finishing the hug. She pulls him in tight, which he allows. Once done, Krayphiss begins to walk away. Zomu says to Krayphiss, I tell you this. You are an amazing father. Krayphiss smiles and nods his head before turning back. Krayphiss holds on to his necklace and says, Don't worry, Kata. She is not an enemy. She is a friend. Krayphiss disappears into Shadow Foot. The end of Installment 1 of The Legend of Krayphiss.